This is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. Question 113 of the Catechism says, what other power does Congress possess? It was talking about the taxing powers, and then it says, what other power does Congress possess? Answer. It may make rules according to which the commerce of the citizen of the United States with other nations, citizens of the United States with other nations, that is, the exchange of goods for theirs or for money by means of vessels or other conveyances, shall be carried on. Also the commerce of one of the states with another, and that of the different states of the United States with the Indian tribes. Some persons believe that the power to regulate commerce among the several states includes the power to make roads and canals from one state to another. Others deny that the government of the United States has authority to do that. Let me read that again. Some persons believe that the power to regulate commerce among the several states includes the power to make roads and canals from one state to another. Others deny this. Way back, a long time ago, 150, 175 years ago, people were building canals all over the country. There's a canal in my neck of the woods that runs from the Erie Canal way, way far away up in upper state New York, clean across New York, clean across Ohio, clean across, then comes down to Wabash River, clean across Indiana, clean to Terre Haute, which is on the border of Illinois and Indiana. That canal's still there. It's not used anymore. It's too small. But can you imagine how much labor it took to dig that canal? They wanted federal money to do that. They didn't always get it. It was privately done in many cases. They didn't believe, because the Constitution doesn't say that Congress can take federal money and build roads from one state to another. This is written back in 1828. He said, some people think Congress has the authority under the Commerce Clause of the Constitution to do that. Others don't. The first interstate highway in America is called the Cumberland Road. It ran from Cumberland in the east, and it was planned to run to St. Louis, Missouri. They got to Vandalia, which is just before you get to St. Louis, about an hour, and ran out of money. Today it's Route 40. US 40 runs from over in Cumberland. I believe Cumberland's in the mountains there, in the western mountains somewhere. You can look it up. The road's still there. The federal government funded that road way back during the administration of the man who's called the framer of our Constitution. He became president, and during his administration, that's James Madison, he signed a bill to fund the Cumberland Road. And the Cumberland Road, of course, became the main artery in America. The Pennsylvania Railroad then followed the Cumberland Road. It became the main artery east and west by railroad. The Cumberland Road is responsible for populating all of what was the most western parts of the state of Virginia, which Virginia ceded over to the federal government. Without the Cumberland Road, people wouldn't have filled up that part of the world. But it was done with federal money, and people didn't believe the Constitution had the authority, or that gave the authority of the federal government to do that. Why? Well, because the Constitution doesn't directly say that. What the Constitution says is that the Congress of the United States shall have power to regulate commerce between the several states, to regulate commerce. Does that include the power to build roads from state to state? You see the problem. Well, finally, the folk that said, yes, it does include that power won out. And back in the 1950s, President Eisenhower signed a bill that established the interstate commerce system. But by that time, there were U.S. highways funded by the general government all over America. And nobody questions it now. But back when this was written, they questioned it. But the canals and the roads had already kind of begun in some places. Not much, but the Cumberland Road was the big one that actually broke the ice and said, well, we're going to do this, and the courts didn't stop them, and they went on with it. What is the next power given to Congress by the Constitution? Answer. You recollect what was before said about naturalization, which means the admitting of a foreigner that is a native of some other country to become a citizen of the United States. Congress has the power to make one uniform rule according to which this shall be done throughout the country. It may also make uniform laws for the whole Union on the subject of bankruptcy. Do you see the importance of the word uniform? Uniform. What is uniform? That means the same to everybody. Nobody can be left out. If you want to be a citizen of the United States, there's only one way to do it. Congress says that's it, and no other way is allowed. Think about roads. Think about the Cumberland Road. Congress funded the Cumberland Road, and there was a controversy whether Congress had the power to fund a road that would run from one state to another state to another state, connect the states. Remember, the states are separate sovereigns, that's separate countries that answer to nobody on earth. The state governments answer to nobody on earth. They're sovereigns on earth, not in the sky, but on earth, on land, with the restrictions, of course, the Constitution gives. The states have conceded some powers to the federal government, but that doesn't mean the states answer to the general government in Washington, D.C. They do not, as a matter of law. Does it happen? Well, it happens a lot. You know, the feds are fond of prosecuting governors of states and sending them to prison if they don't like them. That's wrong. They should stay out of it. If people don't like the governor they have, they can get rid of him. It's called election. Well, when this was written, when the Constitution was written, it was questionable, of course, after that, whether Congress had that power to build interstate roads. Well, then ask yourself this question. Everything that Congress does has to benefit everybody the same. So here's another question. That's why in the preamble it says the general welfare. It doesn't say the specific welfare, it says the general welfare. And that word general means it applies to everybody. What is general applies across the board, the same to everybody equally. If Congress funds a highway from Maryland through Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, does that benefit people in lower LA? That's not Los Angeles, that's lower Alabama. They call themselves lower LA. Does it benefit those people down there? What's the answer? That'd be questionable. I suppose you could say it benefits the whole country and that benefits them and their commerce. Here's another one. This is a well-known story, and the fellow that wrote the story was a congressman, and he was called Colonel, which was popular in those days, Colonel Davy Crockett, congressman from West Tennessee. He said he came home and seeking re-election. It was quite a trek, as you can imagine, in those days. There were no railroads. There were steamboat packets that went down the Ohio River. He'd take the coach to the closer headwaters of the Ohio, get on a packet, and steam down the Ohio River all the way down to where it almost, Cairo, Illinois, where it almost joins the Mississippi, and there he'd get off. He'd take the stage across the tip of Kentucky into east or west Tennessee. They got back there, and he was campaigning, and in those days, you took a twist of tobacco. You kept a bag with twists of tobacco. So he'd take it. They used to take tobacco leaves. You can still buy them this way, and they twist them. It's called twist. Twist it, and then they'd double it over, and you'd buy it that way, and he'd keep them in his pocket or in a bag, and he'd always hand them out. Here's a twist for you. Here's everybody chewed tobacco at that time. And spit amber, what they called amber, which is nothing but tobacco spittle all over everything. It was messy, but everybody did it. He'd hand them out, and he'd walk around his district. Of course, there weren't any cities in West Tennessee at that time, villages and towns. But when he was going from one place to another, he'd stop and talk to somebody. He'd see out working. He was coming down the road, driving his buggy or riding on his horse. I don't remember which it was. And he saw a fellow plowing in the field right beside the road. So he stopped, and he waited for the fella walking behind his horse or mule. He waited for him to get to the end of the field where he'd make another round, and he was standing on the fence corner there, and he hailed him. That's according to his testimony. A rail fence. He hailed him, and the plowman stopped and said, "What can I do for you?" He said, "Well, I'm Congressman David Crockett, and I'm running for office, and I want your vote." And this fellow said, "Well, I won't vote for you. Not unless something changes, I won't vote for you." I said, "Why not?" "Well," he said, "I've been reading the newspaper. And in the newspaper it said that you voted for something that the Constitution doesn't allow you to vote for." Well, he said, "Well, a good politician doesn't argue with a voter, ever. He said, "Well, tell me about it." Talking about politicians, times you have to be deceitful, but one thing you don't do, cardinal rule, you don't argue with a voter. So he said, "Enlighten me. I want to learn from you." And he said, "Well, I was reading the newspaper, said that there was a fire across from Washington, D.C., across the Potomac River. A fire burnt down a bunch of houses over there. And you congressmen got up out of your seats, and people could see the fire on the horizon. You all jumped on your horses and in your buggies and drove over there to see if you could help, and you all helped and tried to get furniture out of the houses before they burnt down and make sure all the babies were out and all that. Then you all went back to Congress, and you got in session, and somebody stood up and said, 'I make a motion that we consider giving those people that lost their homes $20,000. Now, $20,000 would be like $2 million now or something. And the speaker said, or the presider for the speaker said, "Do I have a second on the motion?" "I second that motion." "Well, let's take a vote, or do we need to debate?" I don't know whether they debated or not, but they took a vote, and the yeas had it. They're going to give them $20,000. And this plowman said to Crockett, said, "You show me in the Constitution where you have authority to provide for the specific welfare of some people and not others." He said, now the state of Tennessee, where we live here, can do that if they want to. The legislature can do that. But the Constitution of the United States says you can't do that. You can't provide money that doesn't benefit everybody equally. Uniform, as we're reading here. Uniform laws, uniform taxes. You got to be fair, see? Equal protection of the laws, the courts call it. It even says that in the 14th Amendment, equal protection of the laws. One uniform rule for becoming an American citizen if you come from another country. One rule, no other way. Uniform laws for bankruptcy. The general government in Washington, D.C. has exclusive jurisdiction over bankruptcy. Therefore, every person in America, when it comes to bankruptcy, if you apply, you're not given special treatment. You're treated like everybody else. That's right. Like everybody else. That's called uniform. General welfare. Hey, this is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com. Coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long.